We'll be talking about the approaches taken by the German DLR. The DLR stands for Deutsches Zentrum für Luft- und Raumfahrt. It is the National Aeronautics and Space Research Center of the Federal Republic of Germany. The DLR is also responsible for the planning and implementation of the German space program. Today on stage with me, we have Sabine Philip-May. You can welcome here. Sabine, please take a seat. Here's the comment and the microphone.
Thank you very much.
So Sabine, let's just present overall, in a few words, your career. You're a physicist.
Yes.
You hold a PhD in astronomy and astrophysics.
Yeah.
You also have a history of 25 years of space project engineering, management, and product assurance experience.
Better not talk about it, otherwise one knows we are not so young anymore.
Indeed. We're always reminded.
Yeah.
At the DLR, you have a rich career. You were project manager for the development of the first full operational applications in space of the German laser communication terminals. Let's say this preceded the European data relay systems. And you're now the head of the product assurance department and the head of the project support. You ensure the implementation of a set of measures for cybersecurity, and you're also a member of the steering board of the European Corporation for Space Standardization. So, what can you tell us about the approaches taken by the DLR?
It will be a pleasure to tell you a little bit about what we are doing, but probably not everybody in the audience is aware on how DLR looks like, how we are doing, and therefore I thought probably first a few words and a glance on the DLR Space Agency to give you an impression what we are, then a short motivation, although I don't think in this audience we really need it, but given it, and after that, an understanding how we see space cybersecurity, because I think there are a lot of different definitions about that, and it's probably worth to have some common understanding. I present then the approach, and also how the standardization is done at DLR Space Agency. So let's dive in. DLR is a big institution. We have 57 institute and facilities, in total more than 10,000 employees in 30 locations within Germany. And the Space Agency is only a small part of it, around about 300 employees only. But we cover all the areas from aerospace, space, energy, transportation to security and also digitalization, which is also a big profit because this gives a lot of spin-in and spin-out knowledge, which helps in a lot of areas. Now, the Space Agency is really the funding agency. We give money from the ministerial in grants, in contracts, to industry, to universities, and we cover really mainly all fields of interest in space, starting from development of certain technologies, sometimes even in satellites, but also in bilateral or ESA projects that we provide certain instruments or contributions. It goes over to space exploration. We tackle also new technology, new innovations, but also then into topics of security and safety, and of course a big area of collaboration is the space exploration. With this said, a few words just to the motivation. I think it's very clear here to everybody that satellites play a crucial role in our daily life, and any kind of disruption of these services can be detrimental, as we just heard in the talk before, and it can really disturb our critical infrastructures. And we see also that there is an increased interest from government-sponsored hackers, but also from activists and cyber criminals to try to hack a satellite, to try to do bad things. And let's be honest, most of the satellites are complex structures, so we have a big area of attack surface. And also we should be aware some of our satellites are more than 10 or even 15 years old. And probably, as I said, I'm already a little bit older. Looking back 15 years or so, if you look at the technology that existed there, probably you and I, probably with the help of Google, can easily crack a lot of things. So let's think about how a satellite, which is probably now current technology, which is also not always the latest, looks like in 10 or 15 years. So we really should be aware of it. And one point I really want to mention and emphasize is a lot of people, especially around the universities or so, they say, hey, we built a CubeSat, it's a small thing, nobody is interested in. No, there aren't any uncritical facilities because they can be also used to pose some threat to bigger facilities. If I hack a CubeSat, which has probably some thrusters, I can do a lot of things with it. And I'm sure I have probably not the best imagination, but a bad guy will have a better one than me. And if it's about money, well, they have probably more imagination than we want to. That is the reason why we said, okay, let's think about what kind of facets of cybersecurity do we really think about or should we tackle? And there it becomes very clear we should be very open-minded and have the very broad view. So we look at the space segment with satellites, with the ISS, with gateways, with a lot of small sats, constellations, and then also a lot of different hardware involved, and now new topics like QKD coming up. We have inter-satellite links, so the link segment either in space or then to ground, where we have to consider, okay, some things are kept with authentications, other have encryptions, and some of them aren't encrypted because they are using the public radio links, and the ITU is requesting to have this open. And in addition, of course, we have the ground segment. And here, we should not think short. It's not just the antenna and the operations center and its IT facility, but we really have to think about the whole chain. When the satellite is designed, when it is built, all the time, computers are involved. So also this one has to be taken into account. And I can't go the whole list, but I think you can read it yourself. So it's complex enough, but it clearly indicates we need to do something. We need to identify vulnerabilities. We need to identify threats. And we need to think about what kind of mitigation measures we can do. And with this, it is clear not everybody has to invent the wheel, so we should go for standardization. We should develop standard and norms. And we should have a good collaboration between research, industry, and agency. And one big topic, as I said before, I think it's absolutely necessary to build awareness at the moment. And that is also really the driver for DLR. And to make it clear how complex things are, for us, space cybersecurity is not just IT security, as often people think. But there are a lot of facets belonging to it. It also belongs to robotics. Even aspects like machine learning are essential. All the digitalization of industry, of the processes of manufacturing, all this has to be taken into account. Also, space security is part of space cybersecurity. So that is what we see as this very global picture of space cybersecurity that we tackle. And our main driver, as already said, is we need to create awareness of the risks and threats, establish responsibility, and with this establishing of responsibility, take at least the first steps to identify, manage, and mitigate risks and threats to do at least a basic security. That is our driver. And we do this in two ways. One way is really the IT part. There we work together with the Federal Office of Information Security, the BSI in Germany, where we really say what kind of baseline protection do we need for space structures. And from this development, mainly driven by BSI, we released in June 2020 a catalog with guidelines how to do this basic IT protection. And on the other hand, we could look into the satellite specifics, so the onboard software, satellite controlling, and all these specialties of satellites. And there we establish requirements which are risk-focused. So we look what kind of risks we need to tackle. For this, we have in DLR a catalog which compiles all kind of product assurance requirements and so on. And there we have a dedicated chapter now on space cybersecurity, including minimum requirements on satellite system, on the ground segment, but also on the facilities that build these space assets. So including also the supply chain. This was brought up as an idea in 2017 and worked together in collaboration with German industry partners. We established this catalog in December 2019. And these catalogs are based on best practice. So we didn't invent the wheel, but we said, okay, let's look also outside of space. What kind of standards are there already? What can we use to create meaningful requirements and also to increase awareness? And the requirements mainly then address the kind of vulnerabilities, possible mitigations. Very big part is risk management, and also what kind of security restrictions one needs to establish to be on a safer side. Nobody will be 100% safe, but at least safer. So how is it built up in our catalog? We have cybersecurity as the big building and have three main pillars. We have the software security, which is supplemented by topics like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. Then we have the main part of cybersecurity, and we have this data information security, because also that is important. And as a ground part, the ground segment, which of course includes all of those pillars. And in addition, we also thought one has to be aware that there might be emergency situations and so on. So for that, we also have additional requirements. The requirements focus on space segment hardware, software, the network, on the ground segment, both on facilities, personal anti-hardware, and on the space link, as you have seen before in this big blown diagram. And really the focus, I can't point out often enough, is creating awareness and establishing initial requirements. It will not be covering everything, but it's the first step and the important step. And we do this in regularly asking throughout the project, what kind of vulnerabilities do we have? How can this risk happen? What can we do against it? What kind of maintenance is possible? Do we have contingency planning? And if there's something happening, how do we react? This kind of circle is running throughout all the phases of the project for us. We have structured, of course, our requirements, and it's clear. Starting point is awareness of the threat scenarios, and then it goes really in the assessment of the dedicated mission, what threats can be there, and then as a next step, go into what kind of safeguarding or precaution can I do for ground-based activities, but also for space. And this is also not only now, but really the whole phase from the design, from supply chain until really the end of mission, where you also have to think about what do you do with respect of security, because if you have very sensitive hardware or data on your satellite, you also should probably better consider what do you do at end of life. Because even if it's an old satellite, it might be valuable data for somebody for the future. Then we go into the project itself deeper. We look into the security policy. What do we need to establish there? And from that, go then into the requirements and the control of the project, the management planning, and also then really in detail this kind of risk assessment to really minimize the risk. And one should be clear. Yes, people are thinking, yes, we do it in the beginning, in the design, which is perfectly fine because often enough people only react late in the project. But you have to think about this also after launch. Because often enough satellites are in space for 10 years or more. So the software up there is old. And we know at home how often we do have security patches. Probably it's something we should really start also considering for satellites, or what kind of sandboxing one may do or something like that. With this said, it's clear, probably also already from what I told, we do not have special approaches to say, for example, for a CubeSat that we handle it completely different than the big geosatellite, but it is clear we handle all of them. And it's just then a matter of the quality level, to which detail do you do these kind of risk assessments, or which budget do you invest to do mitigation actions that makes the difference. This catalog, as said, was established already in December 2019. And since then, it is, of course, maintained, updated, and it is, at the moment, applied to any mission or project of the DLR Space Agency, which is funded from our side. And the next steps, of course, it is clear, as I said, it is the first step. Where's the first step? Also, the second step should follow, naturally. We will detail those requirements. We will probably also consider additional topics. As already said, we talking more and more in space industry about digitalization. One has to really understand what kind of impact this has also to space cybersecurity. And one big topic from my point of view is also the supply chain. Because even if I secure all my facilities, all the things I have there, if I supply for a constellation, for example, something from an unknown source, from China or whatever, if there's a good guy sitting there, a clever guy, he can put some kind of backdoor in there, and I have it now in all my satellites. So I have to really consider, where do I buy, how do I control the supply chain? And this should go into further developments of the standards, harmonized within Europe, harmonized also within the world, especially, of course, with our partners in the US. And our goal is to bring this, what we now have as a first stepping stone, into international standards. And with this, for example, also with colleagues already around here, we work at the ECSS to establish a corresponding standard, which is now nearly finalized and hopefully will go soon into public review, which contains quite a part of our requirements here. So with this, I hope I have given you quite some insight, and I'm open for questions. And even if you don't want to ask, probably in the big audience, I will be around today and tomorrow. Feel free to just contact me, ask me, or contact me by email. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can give you indeed a round of applause. Well,
Thanks.
if you're shy, before talking to you in private, you can, of course, launch your question on the application. We still have 10 minutes to go before the lunch break, and we hope you're still up to questions. So, while questions are being logged on, a point you insisted on, but maybe there is no, we can still insist on this, is raising awareness on those threats. And you talked about raising awareness among the space community. And you talked to me earlier about this community who's made of actors who are sometimes not aware that they are part of the space community. And I think you have a message to scientists.
Yeah, I had a lot of discussions over the last few months, and both, even on political level, but especially on university level, often enough, if I bring up this topic of space cybersecurity, I'm told, okay, yeah, that is something for security satellites, for governmental satellites, for probably communication satellites, but I'm doing a small CubeSat on science mission and so on, and I clearly have to insist, no. Also, these small satellites are important and should be taking cybersecurity seriously, because, of course, I can put a lot of things into a governmental satellite because there's also the budget. But if I start blackmailing, have a nightmare. My nightmare would be I have a CubeSat built by some kind of small university. They go for radio, public radio link communication, which is often happening. And this satellite, by chance, flies on the same orbit height as the International Space Station. And if this CubeSat, by chance, also has thrusters, a hacker with an investment of probably 1,000 euro can easily hack this kind of thing and also throw it into the ISS. And sorry, that's a nightmare for me. That's why I say we really have to have this kind of awareness. Yes, I know any investment is hurting if budgets are short, but the consequences are so dramatic. We should really take this serious.
Yeah, indeed. And how, because you talked about the projects you fund, but also about the supply chain that is involved beneath it. How, well, you talked about your nightmares, but how do you make sure that all this chain of factor comply with your requirements? You talked about litigation procedures. Can you tell us more about it, maybe?
I think the main step in the supply chain is really to have the supply chain transparent, to make it really clear where do you get things from, who's involved, what players are there, because often enough people are not even aware where certain components or certain software packages are coming from. Of course, I also like this kind of open source software, but you don't know where it comes from. And often enough, it's not so transparent that you easily see, yes, it's nothing in there which can harm you. So my appel in this way is really look and make it transparent where things are coming from. Because then you can identify, is there a potential risk? Is there somebody probably driven by a national government that might have bad ideas? Or is there somebody probably driven by some kind of terroristic group or so? That might really sound like nightmares, but it is like this. We have to be aware, because as soon you have those backdoors, you are open and you know from your home computers what this might cause. I think everybody of us at once had this kind of blue screen, and I don't want to have $1 million satellite having a blue screen and start rolling around.
Yeah. You talked about the organization of the DLR, the holistic approach of the DLR, but also the fact that the DLR was actually dealing with different domains, space, transportation, energy. You said there were spin-in and spin-out effects of knowledge coming from all those areas. Can you maybe give us examples that show how it's important to keep an open mind and thinking that even though if it's space, you can learn from other domains?
Sure, it will be a pleasure. For example, we had only a few months ago quite some extensive discussions with DLR Institute focusing on artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we all are aware with the big data that is coming from the satellites and also the need of transferring big data from the satellite, both on ground but also in the satellite, machine learning, the use of artificial intelligence becomes more important. And with the discussions we had with this institute, it was very clear that also they are looking into questions of how reproducible such control by an artificial intelligence is. How can we ensure that the reaction is within certain limits? How explainable artificial intelligence is. And this is very important as soon as you start thinking about qualifying all the stuff you need to put into a satellite. And there I would strongly recommend, of course, we have the specialties of satellites and space. But a lot of things are very common also to other industries, automotive control, or even just the science of artificial intelligence, to stick with this example. So why not reinventing the wheel, but learning from the others and also giving them our specialties to consider and say, okay, probably that's a research topic. And that's what we are doing, for example, just in this area now.
Mm-hmm. And we have now a question from the room, a question from Clément Leclerc. That question is, how do you secure the link with satellites at DLR, and do you share the securization with university? The question is right there.
Well, for this satellite link, we use encryption, auto-identification, mostly along the known standards of CCSDS. This is also that we give the support towards universities, how to do it, the main questions, what needs to be done. So there they will get the support from our side. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's also part of the duty of my department, to give this support.
Okay. Well, Sabine Philip-May, thank you very much. It's 12:35 on my clock. So thank you again for your presence. We can give you another round of applause.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me.
It was